I'm filming. I'm here today to talk about something that is commonly known as the oldest profession in the world. But just because sex work has been around since the dawn of society does not mean that prostitutes have gained the same rights as others in our society. Sex workers are a marginalized group, and they have little protection from violence and abuse under the law. Violence is everywhere in the lives of sex workers, especially for those from marginalized groups. The National Journal for Biotechnology Information estimated that between 55 and 75% of all sex workers face a chance for violence within their lifetimes, and 35 to 55% face a chance of violence within a single year. What this means is that up to 3 out of 4 of every sex worker faces the potentially lethal violence within their lives. Urban emergency rooms report that 1 in 5 sexual assault reports come from sex workers. And the violence grows exponentially as sex workers come from already marginalized demographics. The most marginalized and the most disenfranchised sex workers often face the most violence. There's a particular risk of violence and abuse for sex workers who are homeless, who are youths, who are immigrants, who have been drug abusing, who have previously been arrested, and whose work is street-based. U.S. emergency reports also say that sex workers with the greatest number of injuries are often poorer and younger than their older counterparts. It's also important to note that among sex workers' murders in 2016, 41% of them were towards Black sex workers and 29% of them were towards transgender sex workers. But it's not surprising that social stigma would pervade into even murders of sex workers, as it penetrates the lives of every sex worker. The Journal of Sex Research found a correlation between negatively connotated words such as prostitute and whore and the negative effects of prostitutes in those societies and their working conditions, their personal lives, as well as their personal healths. Sex workers who lived in those communities were also found to be less likely to report violence against them because of the belief that judges and juries, as well as law enforcement, would hold a bias against them. One former sex worker who now works to free other sex workers from the cycle of prostitution, Maxine Dugan, once said, "Our activity is illegal, and so that gives license for just about anybody to do just about anything to us and get away with it." The reason they are so able to get away with it, though, is because sex workers are largely unprotected under the law. Often, they are unable to receive rape victim compensation funds, or at least receive them at reduced amounts. In the UK, any solicitation violation equals in a reduced amount despite having the same crime of rape committed against them. In Indiana, one Indiana law states that a victim who was injured while attempting an illegal act is ineligible to receive full rape victim compensation funds. What this means is that although sex workers can still be raped and are still able to be rape victims, because of their work, they're unable to receive the same sort of rape victim compensation funds that most members of our society are able to receive. Judges and juries have also been found to hold bias. In one infamous Northeastern America case, a woman was held at gunpoint and was gang raped. Her judge, Teresa Cardini, defined the act as a theft of services and refused to allow the prosecution to press aggravated assault charges, and thus refused to allow the woman who was raped to receive the full justice that is generally owed to most members of our population. Police and law enforcement have also been found through studies to show both conscious and unconscious bias against sex workers. The National Center for Biotechnology Information, as well as Dr. Dumont J. and McGregor M.J., found a correlation between higher violence against sex workers and harsher policing and criminalization. What this means is that sex workers face higher violence when police presence is also higher. Despite most sex workers falling into prostitution as a last-ditch effort to provide for their families and for themselves, they have faced constant violence from everyone around them in our society, be it the pimps and clients that work with them every day, or the law enforcement, judges, juries, and even the society that they came from. Thank you.